Holy crap, are we at the end of the decade already? 2019 ends in less than 2 weeks, and I'm not really sure if anyone's ready for what comes next. As we count down the days until the ball drops, why not look back at some of the movies that made our stomachs drop in 2019?
This was one hell of a year with plenty of high quality horror to quench our thirst for blood, guts, and brains. We saw remakes of classics, remakes of remakes, and even some original ideas here and there. Some of course stand above the rest in the blood-curdling categories. And those are the movies we want to talk about today.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm Keegan Hughes.
And I'm Lucy McPhee.
Today we're counting down the top 5 scariest movies of 2019.
Are you ready?
Do you have popcorn?
Always.
Maybe take a quick bathroom break before we begin. We don't want things getting too messy. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any horror movie madness. Okay, coming in at number 5, we have Us. Following the success of Jordan Peele's 2017 smash hit Get Out, Us was one of the most highly anticipated horror movies of the year. Following the Blumhouse creed of small budget, big success, this flick took the horror world by storm upon release. The story follows the Wilson family as they try to survive a doppelganger uprising and have to fight their ferocious counterparts one by one. Soon they realize that the whole country is under siege by the Tethered, a society of subterranean body doubles who want to cut ties with the people above. The scissors they wield are both symbolic and scary. This is a tense, brutal horror movie with some fantastic kills and gory deaths. Shoutouts Tim Heidecker. The score does a lot to add tension as well, with shrieking strings the likes of which we haven't heard since the good old days of Psycho. The actors do a phenomenal job playing 2 roles each, the civilized surface dweller and the untamed subterraneans. Lupita Nyong'o is especially excellent as both Adelaide Wilson and her tethered, Red. Of course, there's a twist somewhere in there to keep you on your toes and thinking about what really happened. Jordan Peele being Jordan Peele, this flick has some comedic moments as well to relieve tension, so I can't vouch for it being terrifying the whole way through. But also in classic Jordan Peele style, there is all sorts of social commentary and underlying messages for the audience to turn over in their heads for days. There's a lot to take away from this movie, and Us often prompts you to engage with the themes it's presenting, taking ideas like the distribution of wealth and power, repression, oppression, and the roots of America and turning them into an allegory containing rabbits, clones, and red jumpsuits is no easy task, and Us manages to fit it all in while still being a highly effective piece of horror cinema.
Coming in at number 4, The Hole in the Ground. The Hole in the Ground is a 2019 supernatural horror directed by Lee Cronin. The story follows a young woman who begins to suspect that her son's disturbing behavior is linked to a mysterious sinkhole. The Hole in the Ground is an Irish film that first premiered in Sundance's Midnight section, and Cronin successfully delivers a lot of surface level shivers, but the movie is so much more than that. Parental anxiety has been a trend in cinema in recent years and the perfect stomping ground for the horror genre. Think The Babadook. However, The Hole in the Ground finds a fresh angle on the possessed child subgenre, not to mention it has similar roots to the legend of the Changeling. The fear that your child has been replaced by a doppelganger, and this is exactly what goes down in The Hole in the Ground. Lee Cronin stated, I quote, "What I like to do with folklore and some of the Irish myth that's in the story is just take a little shavings off of it and season as I wish. I never wanted to define necessarily what the monsters are, what the monster's force is in the film. I just wanted it to be there and I never wanted there to be rules." Now, for a good solid hour of the movie, we're unsure whether there is a real threat stemming from the hole in the ground, but that quote confirms it all, so sorry for the spoilers. However, if you remove the monsters in the movie, there is still a sense of real-world relevance that has more power than the monsters themselves. Like many good horror movies, there are psychological elements at play that register with the viewer on a primal level, and in turn tends to be scarier than any jump scare. It's an enthralling ride from start to finish and should definitely be checked out if you haven't already.
Filling out our number 3 spot, we have Climax. A prime example of Gaspar Noé doing exactly what he does best. Climax is an adrenaline-fueled gut punch of a movie that any horror fan would love. Yes, it was technically released in late 2018 in Europe, don't kill me, alright? The American release happened in 2019, A24. The story revolves around a group of elite elite dancers as they work together under the tutelage of a choreographer and a legendary instructor. A snowstorm traps them into a secluded building as tensions rise at a post-rehearsal party. You know, the kind of drama that can only come from young, high-performance athletes at their physical peak. Think a dance-exclusive Olympic village. Somebody spikes the sangria with copious amounts of LSD, and of course, everything goes to hell. The film is divided into 3 parts: interviews, dancing, and insanity. The interviews give us some insight into the characters, and we learn about their dreams, connections, and expectations. The dance section is a visual treat. It showcases the dancers' immense talent and uses choreography that plays immensely well to the camera. I could honestly watch this part like over and over forever, especially thanks to the killer soundtrack. However, if I did that, I would never reach the climax. The insanity section is literally breathtaking. Like, no joke, you barely have like a moment to take a breath while this goes on. There's no tension and release at this point, just madness. Each character reacts to the psychedelic differently, and we see their souls laid bare as they interact with no filter, inhibition, or sense of decency. The music keeps pounding, the dancing continues, and the camera never stops moving as it puts each horrible, brutal moment on full display. The awful, blood-chilling events are unrelenting, and there's never a calm moment to collect your thoughts. Climax will pummel you over the head with heinous act after heinous act as folks dance themselves and others to death. There's one moment involving an unlocked fuse box that just makes me shiver every time I think about it. Climax turns the wild, frantic energy up past 11 and is basically an adrenaline shot in film form. Not for the faint of heart, but I don't think anyone watching this video is.
Coming in at number 2, The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is a 2019 Canadian psychological horror directed by the incomparable Robert Eggers, the man behind The Witch. Shot entirely in black and white, the film stars Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson as 2 lighthouse keepers who start to lose their sanity when a storm strands them on a remote island where they are stationed. The movie is a gripping and hypnotic follow-up to The Witch and conjures up the likes of Andrei Tarkovsky, even Stanley Kubrick. Set sometime in the 1890s, Thomas Wake, played by Dafoe, and Ephraim Winslow, played by Pattinson, spend the duration of the movie wandering its muddy crevices while the movie hints to their fate early on, as we're forced to watch the downward spiral erratically occur. The movie is a slow burn but effective nonetheless, and centers around the unraveling psyches of both characters, because at the end of the day there is nothing more terrifying than our own psychological undoing. Both Dafoe and Pattinson turn in career-defining performances that both deserve an award for, sadly. A lot of folks missed this movie, with very few people talking about it upon its release. The depravity in the movie piles up quickly, with mermaid sex, bewitched seagulls, and an intense showdown to draw you right into its snare. Now, for warning, if you have seen The Witch, you will already know. The Lighthouse isn't comprised of jump scares, but is the horror of isolation which surmounts into an intense thrill ride that, yes, takes its time, but stick around until the end because it is so worth it.
And finally, number 1, Midsommar. This is Ari Aster's second phenomenal horror in just as many years, following up 2018's Hereditary. The man is prolific. A sister film of sorts to Hereditary, Midsommar tackles all sorts of themes that one might usually skip over in horror flicks. It reckons with family trauma, toxic relationships, and the Western idea of death, as well as culture shock and loads of grief. We see Dani, played by the incredible Florence Pugh, in the throes of grief following her sister's carbon monoxide murder-suicide of her parents. I can't begin to describe how effective and gut-wrenching this first sequence is, and it stands alone as an incredibly disturbing and affecting piece of cinema. She then decides to join her boyfriend and his pals as they visit a commune in Sweden to celebrate their 90-year Midsummer festival. Hallucinogens are ingested and rituals are performed, all culminating in one of the most spellbinding and disturbing horror movies ever shot in broad daylight. Midsommar is a shocking, psychedelic slow burn. It's especially shocking to Western audiences because so much of what happens in the film flies in the face of typical American practices. It deviates so far from what one might consider normal that one would wonder how to even return to the world that they once knew. Described by Aster as a Wizard of Oz for perverts, this film is indeed a fairy tale with all the classic elements, even if it doesn't feel like one. Meticulously crafted, we begin on a tapestry that lays out all the events to come like some sort of ancient tale passed down through the generations. For the more detail-oriented filmgoers out there, there is a treasure trove of Swedish folklore and ancient runes to decipher, providing the audience with so many reasons to revisit it again and again. Don't be lured in with hopes of a magical, carefree time though. Midsommar gets absolutely absolutely brutal. Without spoiling too much, I'll mention Senocide, a blood eagle, and the bear suit. For those who have seen it, need I say more? All of these elements blend together in a totally surreal, nightmare-inducing film that all horror fans should go check out. Be careful if you invite friends to watch this though. Some may be so thoroughly disturbed they never take a recommendation from you again. The more I think back on the year, the happier I am with all the scary stuff that made its way to my eyes and ears. How about you? What did you think of our list?
Any movies you think deserve a spot? Let us know down in the comments. In the meantime, let's take a quick look at some of your comments from last time.
Lilith God asks, what about the lesser known weremole? I don't think I've ever heard of that one. It must be too underground.
Cringe. Eric McIntyre says, can't take over my mind if I don't have one. Checkmate. What's it in response to? I don't remember, but I'm gonna take over your mind and never forget it.
Immortal says, I'm Australian. The only thing that is undeniable is that everything above the waist wants to kill you and everything below the waist is seriously thinking about it. And somehow you guys have a booming tourism industry. Maybe keep that little fact to yourself.
Wingy158 says, SCP Foundation, take note. How to quarantine Lucy. Step 1, find a tiny island. Why can't you predict what I'm gonna say?
I'm not a mind reader like you.
You can't quarantine me. I am unstoppable. I am SCP-00000.
How many zeros is that?
It's more zeros coming, but I don't have time.
Speaking of not having time, that's all we have for today. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.
Bye.